How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video here at the Neds MMA channel. I am your host, Omar, and yeah, we're just gonna do a quick recap of Kattar versus Allen that took place last Saturday on looks like October 29th, and then we're gonna go into the Rodriguez Lemos card, which is a bit of a sleeper. Actually a little bit of a decent card. So um, we're gonna start off with just maybe some more impressive things. Roman Dolidze fell Hawes. Man, I feel bad for Phil Hawes. He came back, had a good performance his last time out um, against a Ron Win, and then Roman Dolidze, sneaky leg locks. Man, he blew out Phil Hawes' ACL. You see that thing pop, and Phil Hawes, is trying to dig deep and trying to still make it a scrap. But Roman Dolidze, has power in his hands and just absolutely flatlines Phil Hawes with a combination on the feet with Phil Hawes on one leg, pretty much. Um, I figured if there was a way for Dolidze to win, it was going to be by KO. And, he showed that. This guy has power in his hands, and I think it's time for him to get a step up in competition. I think a fight with Gerald Mearshart would be great for him, or a Kyle Bohalio. One of those two would be pretty good. Um, and yeah, good for Roman Dolidze. Really hitting his stride right now. Getting some, real sneaky finishes there. That's two back to back, both pretty brutal. So good for him. I'm looking forward to seeing his next fight if he's going to continue to perform like this. All right. First, I'm gonna go into some of the other ones before I get to this Khalil Roundtree and Justin Jacoby result, but because I have a lot to say about that. But Trajan Gore versus Josh Fromm, Trajan Gore, kind of showing some really good fight IQ, especially for a fighter that has barely 5 fights. He's 3-2. He's lost his last two in the UFC, so this was really make or break it for him. And he really performed. He choked out Josh Fromm with a vicious guillotine. Not the most technical thing you'll ever see, but hey, man, he did what he had to do. He really wrenched it, used his strength and power in there, and put Josh Fromm to sleep. It's a nice finish. You can look it up. I think it's on ESPN MMA and I think the UFC Instagram. So if you just want a quick look at that, it's actually a pretty fantastic finish. So good stuff by Trajan Gore. Look forward to seeing him again. Like I said, if he keeps performing like that, keeps showing a good fight IQ, and isn't getting tagged or anything like that. Because his last fight was a little worrying. He got knocked out flat by a guy who really doesn't have knockout power. So, you know, good way to get back on the saddle, really perform. I know it seems like the UFC really does like him, so I'm sure he's going to get some favorable matchups, or they're really going to take his time with him and just keep feeding him guys that they believe they can probably get somewhere pretty far with him. Not necessarily say a star, but he's one of those guys that you'll see get favorable matchups, good placements on fight nights or even pay-per-views. He'll probably be put on like big pay-per-view cards on the prelims just so he gets more exposure. But yeah, good for Trajan Gore. Hopefully he turns around pretty quickly. He had a pretty flawless performance, honestly. Probably one of the better performances of the night over someone like Josh Friend where he was the underdog. So good for him. Yeah, he for sure deserved the performance bonus as well as Roman Dolidze, as well as the two other gentlemen on the prelims. Steve Garcia smashed Chase Hooper, and Christian Rodriguez made easy work of Josh Weems, who came in on last second notice. But all right, Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Jared Vandeira. I mean, there was a reason for my rant in the last video why I believe this shouldn't even be the feature fight of the card. It kind of shows you the kind of level some of these guys from the contender series are. They look like, I'm not going to say world beaters, but they look fairly decent once they're in there fighting. But then when you see them actually, compete against guys who have a little more experience in the UFC, it really shows the limit that they're at their current, place, I guess, or their just experience, really. And that shows it because, Jared Vandeira, I hold to it that is not a good fighter, doesn't belong in the UFC, even at heavyweight. Um, just got completely, not smoked, but his fight IQ went out the fucking window. He literally just was landing really good with the leg kicks. He wobbled Cortez Acosta a few times with the leg kicks, but this man is listed as a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu under Joe Stevenson. Why are you not going for takedowns? You're out of Team Quest that are known for their grappling. Why aren't you going for takedowns against this boxer? All he has is a decent right hand. And I don't know. I honestly was fine with the decision. Some people were a little upset by it, but I'm fine with the decision because Jared Van Deer really did nothing other than blast a few couple leg kicks, and Waldo Cortez was just pressing the action and was landing on the feet a few times. But this just shows why these guys, this level of heavyweight, does not belong on the main card, let alone the feature. Right before the co-main event. Like this is like Roman Dolidze, Phil Hall should have been over this. I would have even taken Raheem de Lima and Andre Arlovsky over them because at least with that, Rogerio de Lima dropped Arlovsky and got a first round finish because that's what you get from Rogerio de Lima. Either he gets completely schooled on the feet, like even if Arlovsky was able to survive that round, that early going, that onslaught, he would have pieced up Rogerio de Lima because Rogerio de Lima has the gas tank for like 4 minutes, and Arlovsky would have just pieced him up and actually probably looked decent the longer the fight went on, and it wouldn't have been a bullshit split decision for Arlovsky or the other guy where it's completely uneventful. Not with these guys, man. These guys genuinely look like they still need a lot of time to develop before they're even at the UFC level. So this is good for Waldo, but that guy really needs to take some time in the gym, really learn, really grow, and really try to improve in his overall skill set. Because with that kind of style, he's not going to get far at all in the UFC, let alone the heavyweight division, which is arguably the most scarce division, or the division that needs the least amount of skill, and fight IQ, because you can get away with a lot of stuff just because the power is such a big factor. All right, Max Griffin and Tim Means. I'm surprised this was a split decision. I had Max Griffin 2 rounds to 1 pretty easily. It was a little more competitive than I thought, especially after the second and third round. Max Griffin dropped Tim Means in the first, I think, twice, and then kind of became one of those veteran fights. Both guys just very aware, very savvy of what the other one does, and it's kind of a very 50-50 fight. But I thought Max Griffin did enough to win the second round, and I almost thought he won all three. I'm kind of surprised what a judge gave two to Tim Means. So good for Max Griffin. This doesn't really change anything. In the welterweight division, it doesn't really have any implications, especially it being a split decision. It's not going to look great on paper. I mean, compared to say if you knocked out Tim Means in that first round, maybe you could have gotten a bit bigger step up. Maybe someone just outside the top 15 or someone at the 15 ranking, like maybe like a Li Ching Liang, like the Leech or something like that. That would be pretty great. But no, split decision. He's probably going to kind of just fight someone in that area of the 15-ish range. Let's see. Possibly he could probably get someone. I don't know. It's hard to say, because it's like, how much does the UFC really like Max Griffin? It seems like they do like him, but like who either they could give him someone like Jake Matthews to be more of a stepping stone, or maybe they weren't happy with his performance and might give him Chaos Williams. Maybe try to get a good highlight reel for Chaos Williams, or they do another vet fight at like a random fight night card and give him Alex Morono, who has only fought once this year. So I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, a card like this doesn't really have a lot of ranking implications, so it's nothing really great to talk about. But all right, the egregious judging scorecard of the typical UFC Apex card: Khalil Rountree versus Dustin Jacoby. Before I even begin, I was already biased towards Khalil Rountree just because I really like his style, and he's fun to watch, and he has a good backstory. He's been through a lot. Got into martial arts in first because he was very, very heavy, very, very overweight. I think he said he was at one point at 300 pounds, and now he's fighting in the UFC. And he's absolutely shredded. He really worked his ass off, and he is very physically he has really good genetics because he's able to drop down, fight at 205 pounds, be shredded. Still have fast muscle twitch fibers, be explosive, hit really freaking hard, and good for him. I was rooting for him, but he did not win this fight. I thought Dustin Jacoby was robbed. I thought Dustin Jacoby easily won rounds 1 and 2. I could see the argument for Khalil Rountree round 3, but even then, I thought you could easily give that to Jacoby as well. I don't know which judges could give the first round to Rountree or even the second. I mean, they always say it's like damage, 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 but it's what, at what point does damage overtake, activity? Because yeah, to a certain extent, Roundtree was landing the bigger shots, but he wasn't landing at nearly the highest, as high as a percentage rate, or as active as Jacoby. Like, if we just pull up the stats, it's kind of ridiculous. You hear the stats and you're like, how is this even, like how could you even give the round to Roundtree? Like, Jacoby was never dropped. He got wobbled a bit in the third. But he was right back in there. He was right there firing back, and like, it's not like the O'Malley fight that happened a week prior, where both fighters got rocked. Both had very close rounds. These weren't really close rounds, in my opinion. I don't like Jacoby outlanded Roundtree, but with significant strikes, 34-20 in round one. Round two was closer with 39-35, and then round three, excuse me, was 47 strikes landed for Jacoby and 30 for Roundtree. He got outstruck in every round. The closest round was the second on paper by numbers, but you still can't give him rounds one or I would even say rounds all three, even with the damage. And I honestly don't believe that these numbers are right for total strikes thrown for Roundtree at 92 compared to 84, because that just because Jacoby was still the more active fighter. You know, total strikes landed was 122 for 188. 122 landed for Jacoby, only 88 for Roundtree. Like, especially when you're watching the fight live, you just can't. You just I don't know where you can defend that Roundtree won that fight. Um, and people bitch and moan about like decisions like O'Malley, Yan saying it's a robbery. The UFC's rigged towards ex fighter, but that wasn't a robbery by any means. I can see why O'Malley won this fight. I just on rewatch, I just can't see how you can give that fight to Khalil Roundtree at all. Justin Jacoby was straight up robbed. This takes a huge hindrance to Jacoby's career because he was ranked 14th, and now he lost his ranking spot, got half his pay, and he didn't even really need to take this fight to begin with. I mentioned, like, in the last video, he didn't need to take this fight. He deserves someone in the top 15. He should be fighting like someone like a Paul Craig or a Jimmy Cruz, someone like that in the rankings. Khalil Roundtree is way further down. Jacoby has 2 wins over guys that beat Roundtree in his current in his win streak that he had prior to Saturday. So I really feel bad for Jacoby. I mean, this isn't a fault on Roundtree. This is more a fault on the judges and the judging criteria, and when does what matter. It seems like it's always back and forth of what matters. Is it damage? Is it grappling offense? But this was easier to see because this was straight up a kickboxing fight. They have Jacoby has for 3 takedowns attempted, but when you watch it, it's just trying to get a Roundtree to react more and get him gassed out, and then he immediately clinched right away. It wasn't like he was shooting for a takedown, he got completely stuffed and getting back up. No, he shot in, very half-assed shot, because his point wasn't to shoot a takedown and get him down. It was to fake a takedown, get clinch, make Roundtree work, get those muscles filled with lactic acid, and wear him out. And that's literally what he was trying to do. So I feel bad for, like I said, I feel bad for Jacoby. I hope the UFC takes care of him, and he still is in the top 15. And I mean, good for Roundtree. He got a win, but my man still needs a lot of work if he wants to beat some of those top 15 guys. Even though he has beat Paul Craig, and like I said, I would just hope he is able to get a couple more decent wins going, because he deserves it. But he did not win that fight. All right, on to the main event. Man, what a tragic one. Arnold Allen, Calvin Kattar. The fight was just getting started. Arnold Allen won the first round as I expected, but really Calvin Kattar throws a jump knee, lands all funky. You can see his knee completely just blow out, and it's just like, oh no, here we go again. This is the 4th one this year, I believe, or 3rd one this year where an injury happens in the main event, and the fight's over before it even really begins. And Literally, it looked like Kattar was good in between rounds. He was hopping around, but the second Arnold Allen throws one leg kick and lands it, it's over. And it sucks because we don't have a real clear cut contender at featherweight. You know, Yair Rodriguez, same thing happened to him. Brian Ortega blew out his shoulder. While he was going for an armbar. Um, Kattar, you know, lost a split decision to Emmett, but on rewatch, I didn't think Emmett won that fight, and he hasn't fought since then. And that fight took place back in May, I believe. And Allen, on paper he beat Calvin Kattar, but did he really beat him? No, because Calvin Kattar blew out his knee. It's not like he threw a leg kick and then injured it. No, it came from Kattar trying to throw a flying knee. It wasn't even really look like he was throwing it with mean intent. It was just more like to get, a little more respect out of Allen to not press as hard as he did. And then he lands all funky and blows out his knee. So featherweight's in a weird place of limbo right now. I think they need to book Arnold Allen against Emmett or against Yair, or have a little mini tournament with Allen, Yair, Emmett, and Max. But it all depends on what Max wants to do. Or they could wait till the results of Bryce Mitchell and Ilya Taporia. Maybe throw one of those guys in there as well, to see just how things pan out. Maybe have a little tournament, because it's pretty much official that Volkanovski is going to fight Islam in February. So that kind of really holds up the rest of the division, and none of these guys really showed to deserve a title shot. If Rodriguez had knocked out Ortega, that would be a different story. Or if Arnold Allen had starched Calvin Kattar on the feet with a finish, or submitted him, then yeah, I'd be like, Arnold Allen, yeah, you're book that for an interim belt while Volkanovski does his thing. And then I'm sorry, but Emmett still needs work to do if he wants to get a title shot. No offense to him, but your split decision win over Calvin Kattar doesn't really count for much, especially if someone beats him convincingly more than you did in such a short amount of time afterwards. But yeah, man, it's part of the game. It sucks, but it is what it is. You just gotta move on and just hope for the best, and just have the sport keep on trucking along. So, yep. All right, been rambling on about that card for a little too long, but let's get into UFC Fight Night 214, or UFC Vegas 64, or UFC Fight Night Rodriguez vs. Lemos. Decent little card, not gonna lie. I actually really like this main card, for the exception of one fight, which classic UFC, still fucking doing this. These fucking idiots, man. They're dumb as fuck. Let's start with fights that actually have me kind of intrigued a little bit, and I think they're going to be pretty competitive. Mario Batista versus Benito Lopez. This is probably going to be sleeper fight of the night. I think Batista's going to get the finish, but it's going to be a dogfight. Benito Lopez, this guy's been out for such a long time, man. This guy's last fight was July 2019, so he hasn't fought in over 3 years. So it kind of sucks that he hasn't been active, and he wasn't even active when he first joined the UFC. He fought on the Contender Series. I think it was the first season back in 2017. Beat Steven Peterson in a hell of a fight. And then he fought Albert Morales in another fun fight just a few months later, But then is off for 14 months, fights Manny Bermudez. Manny Bermudez submits him in the first round. I mean, no shame in that. Manny Bermudez was one of those big what-if kind of guys, because he was very young at the time when he was in the UFC, and dude was 13-0, 10 submission finishes, 2 decisions. This guy was a beast, man. This guy's genuinely like a very legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and he's only a purple belt. So that kind of shows you that he's very talented on the ground. But then he got cut because his fat ass couldn't make weight. He missed weight at 135 pounds, and then he missed weight at 145 pounds. And even in his sole fight outside the UFC, he missed weight at lightweight too. So, motherfucker needs to lay off the tacos. But that's besides the point. Yeah, man. Like I said, Benito Lopez is coming off a win. He beat Vince Morales back in 2019, but he's been off for 3 years, man. That's such a long time, 40 months, man. That's insane. And what's crazy? He's only 28. He has the exact same birthday as I do. He's only a year older than I am. So it's kind of wild, that he's been this inactive. I'm sure he's had injuries that's been hindering him from coming back. But they didn't do him any favors fighting out Mario Batista. Mario Batista is a very good fighter. Mario Batista is out of the MMA lab. A lot of fantastic fighters out there like Benson Henderson in that camp. And he's been pretty good so far in the UFC. Came in on short notice against Sanhagen, lost in the first round. No shame in that. But since then, he's had 5 fights. He's 4-1. Only lost to Trevin Jones back in 2021. He had 2 fights in 2022. I mean, my boy's also been out for. Actually, I'm wrong. This is his 3rd fight this year. He's staying active. Last one finished Brian Kelleher in 2.5 minutes. He finished him faster than Usman. Or Umar Nurmagomedov, but they rank him, but that's whatever. Fucking UFC being shilly. But yeah, fantastic win coming off Brian Kelleher, smoking him like that. And 3rd fight this year, which I'm really happy about. I'm happy that he's staying active. And, they gave him, for Bautista, this is very good for him. Benito Lopez, not so much. But it's going to be a fun firefight as long as it lasts. So I'm going to have to go Mario Batista via finish. First or second round. I think Benito's inactivity is gonna be a little bit too much for him right now. And with Batista having 2 fights already this year, one being a big finish in the first round, virtually taking not much damage. Odds are against him. Excuse me. Odds are against him. So I have to go with Batista. It's the safer pick. So yeah, Batista, first or second round finish. And then Miranda Maverick, Shanna Young is pretty decent. Nothing great. Miranda Maverick's really good. One of the better prospects in the UFC, especially being so young at 25. She should be 11-3 because she was absolutely robbed by Macy Barber. That was robbery of 2021. Honestly, I don't know how they could score that to Macy Barber, because literally 22 out of 22 media outlets scored that bout for Maverick. So that's how you know it was bad. That's how you know it was bad. It was a bad one. She's fighting Shanna Young. It's kind of a setup fight for her a little bit. She's 1-2 in the UFC. She's lost to Macy Chiasson, Stephanie Eggers. She's coming off one over Gina Mazzani, but Gina Mazzani's not great. I never thought she was. And she was coming off a loss before that to Priscilla Cachoeira, who also thinks sucks. And she's been TKO'd in like 4 over 6 losses. And has basically been, she's a 7-6 fighter, so that doesn't really put much on it as a good win for Shanna Young. So Miranda Maverick, it's gonna be a unanimous decision win. I'm happy that she's getting her career back after that egregious robbery. So good for her. Derek Minner versus I'm gonna butcher his name, Shailin Nordembayak. I think that's how you pronounce it. Chinese fellow, very young for having so much experience. This man has 48 fights. He's only 28 years old. He's actually pretty good, man. Only lost to Josh Kulabau. Josh Kulabau is a very underrated guy in the featherweight division. But so far, he's coming off 2 wins over TJ Brown and Sean Soriano. And yeah, man, this guy's a finisher, dude. This guy has 28 of his 38 wins are by finish. This guy's extremely active. He looks to fight a lot. And I think he's just going to put it on Derek Minner. I think he's going to have the age advantage, the technical advantage. Derek Minner's coming off 2 losses. One over Ryan Hall. The one prior was to Darren Elkins, got TKO'd in that. And, he's 3-2, 2-3 in the UFC. He has a decent win or a couple decent wins on his record. TJ Laramie and Terrence McKinney. But, it's more of a recency thing. It's like, how good do you really look? Like I said, his last 2 losses, he looked like shit against Ryan Hall. He was engaging in the grappling when he shouldn't have. And then Darren Elkins, you shouldn't be losing to Darren Elkins in 2021. No offense to Darren Elkins, but, Darren Elkins is 38, and he's really past his prime, even though he's beating guys that don't belong in the UFC. So It's really hard to say. Like at one point, my man was on a 4-fight losing streak, and even then, in his wins, he was getting kind of beaten up. So I don't have a lot of confidence in Derek Minner against Shailan. So I'm gonna have to go with Shailan via TKO. I think Shailan is gonna really put it on and have a great performance, and kind of just put it on him, man. Derek Minner. All right, on to the main card. Grant Dawson versus Mark Madsen, man. This is a great fight. Great fight for us grappling fans out there. Um, Both undefeated in the UFC. You know, Mark Madsen is on a 4-fight win streak. Uh, Fairly inactive. You know, he's only fought once a year since signing to the UFC back in 2019. And Grant Dawson, you know, very underrated guy in the lightweight division. I feel like when people talk about the lightweight division, they only talk about prior, a little bit beforehand, before some of these guys are ranked. They were only talking about Guram Kutaledze. They were only talking about Arman Tsarukyan, Demir Zmagalov, even Thiago Moises was getting thrown in there. But no one was really bringing up Grant Dawson. You know, Grant Dawson, on paper, technically, is on a 5-fight win streak at lightweight. I mean, 2 of those bouts were at quote-unquote catchweight. But anything over 146 is considered lightweight. And my man has been having a decent amount of finishes, too. You know, last fight out, he choked out Jared Gordon back in April. Jared Gordon is fighting Paddy Pimblett next. You know, and people are thinking that it's actually kind of a hard matchup for him. You know, he had a draw against Ricky Glenn. I think that was more of an IQ thing, where he really kind of just threw the third round, like, in the fucking out the window, because he just got 10-8'd. Like, if he was more active, he would have won the decision right there, but he really shot the bed. But that was over a year ago, and in that Jared Gordon win, he really changed it up by getting a third round finish. You know, not leaving it in the hands of the judges. Same thing as last fight prior, Leonardo Santos. You know, he knocked him out with 1 second left in the fight. And then before that, the Derek Minner, who I mentioned earlier, you know, he submitted him via rear naked choke. Submitted Mike Trezano. He beat Julian Erosa. That one has aged very well. Erosa's on the cusp of being ranked in the top 15. You know, so I think Grant Dawson is very underrated. You know, he's only 28. I think he gives a lot of problems to a lot of guys in that division just because he's more of a grappler. I hope him being with James Krause is great because, you know, he for sure is going to be able to work on his hands a lot. Oh, shit. Never mind. He's not with James Krause anymore. He moved to American Top Team this year. Interesting. Interesting indeed. Well, I'll see who's in his corner on Saturday. But man, that was interesting. I did not know he left Glory MMA. I didn't know he left James Krause's camp. But more on Mark Madsen, you know, silver medalist in the Olympics, 2 times. Oh no, just once. You know, this guy is a fantastic wrestler. But he is on the older side, man. He's 38 years old. You know, this guy should have been in the UFC years prior. You know, I'm happy for him that he won gold in 2016. But that's when he should have continued. That's when he should have picked up his MMA career back up because he had a pro fight in 2013. Didn't have another one until 2014. Then nearly 4 years later, he has his next fight in 2018. And he did have an active 2018. Fought 4 times. 4 times. And then 3 times in 2019. But since then, he's been pretty inactive since joining the UFC. You know, I wish right after the Olympics, he really just started training MMA full-time and getting a few fights in 2017, even in 2016. Once that was done, you know. Actually, no, never mind. But I wish he had like 3 fights in 2017 to really bolster up his record and give him more experience in MMA. This one's a little funky because it's like, will Grant Dawson try to initiate the takedowns? Because he's going to have a hard time taking down a silver medalist. But also, both these guys are known to slow down a little bit. So it's more of a who's going to slow down more. I think this is going to be a very close fight. I think it's going to be contested mostly on the feet. So I expect Grant Dawson to have the advantage on the feet a little bit. He's going to be more active. And I think I'm going to get a Grant Dawson 29-28 decision win, with one of those first 2 rounds being very flip-floppy. Might even see a split decision here. This might be one of those fights where it's going to be, you know, complaining again about a robbery just because of how close it could be. But I might have to go with my instinct, and I have to say Grant Dawson. just because of the MMA experience and just uh, getting in there and being active. And Mark Manson is 38, so that does really hinder it a little bit. All right, Tagir Ulanbekov versus Nate Maness. Tagir, one of Khabib's boys out of his camp. Nate Maness, going down to flyweight. I don't know why. He's like 5'10", and he's not a small bantamweight by any means. And it's not like he was getting muscled around bad at bantamweight. Like, okay, you fought Umar Nurmagomedov, but all he did was just keep top control. He had a very boring fight, a very not that impressive performance against you. So I don't know what the decision was to go down to to flyweight. So it's kind of a hard to see how he is going to be physically. I don't think Tagir Ulanbekov is all that either. I think Tagir is one of the worst guys out of that camp, out of Khabib's team. He arguably he should be on a 2-fight losing streak. He got gifted a decision against Alan Nascimento. Bruno Silva, he won that by grappling a lot, but because Bruno Silva is actually one of the smaller flyweights, Bruno Silva is a tiny guy, and he was just able to muscle him around because Ulanbekov is like 5'7". He's one of the bigger guys. He's really drained to get down to that division. And like I said, Bruno Silva was already also coming off 2 losses, so and has been, isn't that great to begin with himself. Like yeah, he's coming. He was since then he's won 2 fights, but that was back in 2021. He hasn't been seen in a year and a half, so it's really hard to really dictate those wins. And like I said, he shouldn't have gotten a decision win against Alan Nascimento. He got schooled he lost a little bit of a controversial fight against Tim Elliott because Tim Elliott was being veteran savvy and he was holding the gloves a lot. But, what Tagir was doing was looking at his corner, looking at Khabib for help. It's like, dude, you shouldn't be looking at him. Look at the ref, be like, motherfucker, look, he's grabbing my shit. But he didn't, and I think that kind of shows him that, like, once things weren't going his way, they kind of break a little bit, they kind of show that they will. And but I don't know if we're gonna get that because Nate Maness is cutting down to flyweight, and I don't know how he's gonna look. Is he gonna be too drained? He's already a tall, length, skinny guy for the division, so I think that's kind of a mistake for Nate Maness. I think just too many factors are going against Maness right now that I think Tagir's gonna win an uneventful decision. But I don't know. Nate Maness' size might give Tagir some problems, and I don't think Tagir's nearly as good as Umar, or nearly as good as these other guys. But this one's a very 50-50 pick 'em. I'm just gonna go with Tagir just because he's gonna be. I think Maness is just gonna be too drained. And if this was at bantamweight, I would go to Maness, no questions asked. But since it's flyweight, with Maness already being a tall, lengthy dude and pretty lean, I just don't see how the cut to flyweight's gonna benefit him in any way. So Tagir, just because too many factors are going against Maness. All right, Chase Sherman, Josh Parisian. Just gonna say this doesn't belong on the main card. Mario Bautista, Benito Lopez deserves to be on the main card over that. This is a shit heavyweight fight, just like last week's. I'm just going to go with a Chase Sherman TKO win. Who gives a shit? I honestly don't care about this fight. This is going to be a piss break kind of fight. I'm going to go get a snack while I'm at it, too. Neil Magny versus D-Rod. D-Rod, man, getting back in there very quickly after his controversial win over the Leech. I think people were more upset because they finally turned around and became fans of the Leech rather than them actually looking at the fight. Looking back at it on rewatch, it's the same thing as the O'Malley one. These fights are too close. Like the rounds are too close, where either guy can get it. That doesn't make it a robbery. D-Rod did not rob the Leech. And I think the MMA gods were returning that one a favor to D-Rod for his robbery against Nicholas Dalby, the one that Nicholas Dalby robbed him 2 years prior. And I thought, it's not like an egregiously bad. D-Rod didn't look bad. He still came in on short notice and put in work. Last second change in opponents. He did the best he could, so, I'm not going to hold it against him. Neil Magny, on the other hand, 35, not getting any younger. Got pretty much outclassed by Shavkat Rakhmonov. Didn't look great against Max Griffin. His last good win was Jeff Neal, but that's also Jeff Neal who looked like shit. Also, he looked like, and then also Magny looked like shit against Chiesa. And like a lot of these wins, other than the Leech one, aren't aging that great. Rocco Martin was whatever. Robbie Lawler in 2020 is whatever. and he just UD'd him. You know, it was kind of a shitty fight too. So I might have to go with D-Rod. I think honestly D-Rod is gonna come out with a purpose. I don't think he was happy with how how much shit he got for the Leach decision. You know, like I said, that's not his fault. And I think he's gonna go out there and try to prove a point and really establish himself as a force to be reckoned with in the welterweight division. So I think D-Rod's gonna look fantastic. I think he's gonna get a TKO win. This fight was supposed to take place, I think, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. But then D-Rod, I think they delayed it due to an elbow infection. I'm surprised that was going to be able to heal in 3 weeks. I'm not going to say BS, but that just gives more time for D-Rod to prepare and lose the weight. Um, so I think that just benefits D-Rod. So I'm going to have to go with the D-Rod TKO win in the first or second round. I think D-Rod just gives problems to someone like Magny, who's tall and lengthy and has good boxing. We've seen it time and time again with Magny. That he is just a gatekeeper in the welterweight division. You know, if you can beat him, you can beat a lot of guys in the top. You can be in that top 10 range, but if you can't beat him, you're not sniffing top 10 anytime soon. Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos. You know, one of the actual intriguing women's main events. You know, this is actually a really fun fight. I do think Rodriguez is getting done very dirty by the UFC. Her needing to step down to fight Amanda Lemos when she's currently on a win streak over Yan Xiaonan, Mackenzie Dern, who those two just fought in a main event spot, Michelle Waterson, and Amanda Ribas. Her last loss was a split decision against Carla Esparza, which you could easily have given it to Marina Rodriguez. She's also beat Tisha Torres. Like she's fought like all top 10 girls in that division. Why is she not getting like a Rose Namajunas? You know, why isn't she getting the title shot? I think it's kind of all bullshit. I think the UFC really wants Zhang Weili to be champion, and they gave her that one to her. Like and all the rankings, like on Tapology, they have Marina Rodriguez at 7, Yan Xiaonan at 4, Dern at 6. Her last 2 wins are those 2 women, and they weren't controversial decisions. Why is Marina Rodriguez getting disrespected? I really hope she puts on a stamp against Amanda Lemos. I hope she smokes her. Nothing against Amanda Lemos. She is fun to watch. She is fantastic. She does put on bangers of fights. You know, she starched Michelle Waterson her last time out. She's starched Montserrat Ruiz. Starched Renato Souza. You know, smoked Miranda Granger. You know, she's finishing girls. You know, she's what is that? 10 over 12 wins are by finishes. That's what the kind of finish rate you want to see out of someone to make a splash in the division. But she is 35. She got starched by Andrade in the first round, even though she was doing pretty good. She was putting up a good fight, and she went to split decision against Angela Hill, which I did think she won. But I mean, Angela Hill's been smoked before, and if you want to like really be like a force to be reckoned with, you need to smoke fighters like Angela Hill. You know, having close fights with her isn't the best. I don't want to take anything away from Angela Hill, but that's just how it should be. And like I said, man, I really hope she gets a finish and calls for a title shot, man. Just be like, I want the winner of next week's fight, which is Esparza versus Wiley. She completely deserves it, man. She deserves it over anyone above her. She deserves it over Rose. She deserves it over Yan, Andrade, and Dern. Like, no bullshit, dude. It's honestly pisses me off. And you know what? No one's talking about it because no one cares. Because it's no one really cares about this sport other than a few fans like myself. Marina Rodriguez is getting done dirty here. I hope the MMA gods are kind and generous and award her with a first round finish, and she can ask for a title shot. Because it's fucking bullshit that Mackenzie Dern and Yan Xiaonan are ranked over her when those are her last 2 wins. Like, come on, man. Get the fuck out of here. That fucking bullshit. But Marina Rodriguez by finish. I think she's just too scrappy and too good for Amanda Lemos. And age is going to help over Marina Rodriguez. And Marina Rodriguez has 5-round experience. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoy the fights. Thank you for tuning in. I know this is longer than expected. Kind of had a lot to say. You know, like I said, this is actually a decent card overall. So, good fights. Scrappy fights. It's going to be a fun night. other than that heavyweight fight. Well, actually, that heavyweight fight might be fun because Chase Sherman does come to scrap, but they suck and they don't belong on the main card. Show some respect to Mario Batista and Benito Lopez, please. But all right, thank you guys. Have a good one. Stay safe, and God bless, and rest in peace. Take off.